Welcome, my friends, to another episode of Facts Me. I am your host, Stephen Lancaster. This is the place where we educate, not fabricate. And today we're diving deep into one of the most misunderstood, misused, and misrepresented rights in modern civilization, and that is freedom of speech. Because there seems to be a very large portion of this country that does not understand nor comprehend what freedom of speech actually means. And these groups that I'm talking about, I probably don't even have to name them, but it is the Democrats, liberals, and the extreme, far, far, far away from reality left. These groups love to use freedom of speech to their benefit, but when it's used against them, all of a sudden it's a crime. Guys, we have seen this over and over again, and it has escalated to an apex over the past 25 years. It's a phrase that gets thrown around like a shield and a sword, freedom of speech. But lately it feels like no one actually knows what it means. And when I say no one actually knows, I'm talking about the Democrats, the liberals, and the left. Because somewhere along the way, we confused freedom of speech with freedom of consequence. And that confusion, that inability to tell the difference, has become one of the biggest social, moral, and even spiritual problems of our time. So let's cover all aspects of this because, like I said, and I pretty much make clear on my social media presence, we are all about the facts here. And in order to understand the facts, you need to understand everything surrounding an idea. Freedom of speech, what was the foundational idea? Freedom of speech was never meant to make us comfortable. Okay, it wasn't designed so everybody would agree. You have your opinion, I have my opinion. If my opinion is against yours, you shouldn't hate me for that. My job isn't to make you comfortable with your own opinion. It was designed to protect the uncomfortable. It wasn't written for the things everyone agrees on. It was written to protect the words that offend, challenge, and force us to think. In America, the First Amendment guarantees that the government cannot silence you for what you say. But it never promised that people wouldn't respond. You hear me talk a lot about accountability, folks, and there are certain political parties that couldn't even spell that word. Freedom of speech keeps you out of jail for your opinions. It doesn't keep you out of court of human reaction. That's where so many lose the plot, because we live in an age where outrage is currency. And if everyone's shouting, who's actually listening? And that's pretty much the point I'm at personally when it comes to the Democrats, liberals, and the left. I've just stopped listening because the ongoing hate and spewing of misinformation will never lead to progress. So why should I waste my time even entertaining it anymore? But now we have a modern paradox. We built a world where everyone has a microphone, but no one has patience. This is the generation of instant gratification. Social media has turned speech into ammunition, not expression. We hit post or tweet or share without thinking that every word we put into the world is a reflection of who we are. And every reaction we get is the world holding up a mirror. People say, you can't cancel me, I've got free speech. But what they really mean is, I want to speak without being held accountable. We don't play that game. My generation doesn't play that game. We are a tough love generation. We are not going to tell you you are right when you're clearly wrong. We're not going to tell you you are a winner when you have lost. That is not freedom. That is entitlement. Because speech has always carried weight. If you lie, manipulate, or spread hate, that's not bravery. That's abuse of the gift. Freedom demands responsibility, not recklessness. As Plato said in The Republic, a book that I'm just so engrossed in this book. It's so good, my friends. If you've never had the opportunity to read The Republic by Plato, please do yourself the favor and do it. It's going to change your whole perspective on life. But as Plato said in The Republic, when there is an income tax, the just man will pay more and the unjust less on the same amount of income. It's the same with speech. The just speaker bears the weight of their words, while the unjust hides behind slogans like free speech to escape accountability. So we have the great consequence debate. And let's make this clear, because the Democrats want to make you believe something else. A consequence is not censorship. If you say something cruel and people call you out, that's not oppression. That's society doing what it does, responding. We don't live in bubbles. We live in communities. When people push back against your words, that's dialogue. When they silence you with fear, that's tyranny. The line between those two is razor thin, and we're walking it every day. There's a growing idea that being offended is the same as being harmed. And that's dangerous, because once feelings become law, truth dies. Nobody is harming you by disagreeing with you. No one is harming you by not sharing the same ideas as you. For example, if you're a man and you believe that you're a woman, I don't agree with that. That's not for me. I know biology. I know science. But you are certainly welcome to walk through life believing you are a woman. I'm just not going to pretend with you. Are you following me? I'm not harming you. I'm just not going to pretend with you. That's unfair for you to ask of me. If every strong opinion becomes hate speech, then free speech ceases to exist. But if we remove all accountability, all consequence, we descend into chaos. Somewhere between science, silence, and chaos lies wisdom. And wisdom is what we're missing. In every generation, protest has been a heartbeat of free societies. From civil rights marches to anti-war rallies to modern demonstrations on campuses and city streets. Protest is speech in motion. It's the physical form of opinion, the sound of democracy breathing. But lately, something has shifted in that department. We have reached a place where disagreement is treated as violation, where hearing an opposing view feels like an assault on identity. You'll see it across the political spectrum, from college halls on the left to social media storms on the right. Some call for speakers to be banned. Others call for boycotts or blacklists. Some call for murder, like what happened with Charlie Kirk. Both sides forget that to be free means to face the discomfort of ideas you don't like. It isn't an infringement on your rights when someone debates you. I'd love to debate. I am a master at debating. I am a master at debating because I educate myself, and I only bring facts to the table. And I don't speak unless I can win. And I'm not winning to feed my ego. I'm winning to educate, to keep the truth out there. And when protests turn violent, when property is destroyed, when voices are silenced through intimidation, that crosses the line from expression into suppression. At that point, freedom of speech doesn't vanish because of government censorship. It erodes because of civic intolerance. Hey, my friends, please join me on Facebook at facebook.com/CanYouFaxMe to continue these discussions, gain access to powerful memes, and leave your thoughts and comments. That is facebook.com/CanYouFaxMe. Can you fax me? And that's facts, spelled F-A-C-T-S. See you there. Now let's talk about something many confuse. Being arrested for actions taken during a protest, or being fired, banned, or criticized for what you've said. That is not an infringement on free speech. The First Amendment protects you from government punishment for your words. It doesn't shield you from real-world consequences. If your speech incites violence, breaks a law, or violates the rights of others, the legal system responds. And that response is not tyranny, it's accountability. If you threaten somebody, and we are seeing that so much on social media, these sick mental influencers literally holding nothing back and wishing death upon certain individuals, threatening to kill these people, kill their family. Folks, that is against the law. And I really hope we start seeing these individuals get arrested. That is accountability. That is the consequence for how you chose to use your freedom of speech. You did it irresponsibly. The same goes for private life. If you work for a company and you post something hateful, the company may act. That's not cancel culture. It's the constitutional sense. It's the reality that freedom comes hand in hand with responsibility. And here's where we need maturity. Opinions are not facts. Facts can be proven, tested, verified. Opinions are personal reflections of how we interpret facts. And sometimes they're built on emotion, misinformation, or fear. When someone presents evidence that challenges what you believe, that isn't oppression. It's an opportunity. It's a mirror held up to your own convictions asking, why do you believe what you believe? And sadly, when you question these certain individuals, they turn violent or they turn hateful or they don't speak at all. They walk away because they don't have the answer, which means they stand for nothing. If we're serious about truth, we have to be willing to say, maybe I got that wrong. I am the first to say I love being humbled. The whole premise of Fax Me is to keep the truth out there. And if I state something incorrectly, I'm going to redact it, apologize, and fix the problem. Because I don't have an ego to worry about. My ego would be hurt if I wasn't keeping things factual. Because growth doesn't come from defending falsehoods. It comes from having the courage to revise them. That's the heart of intellectual freedom, my friends. Not clinging to your beliefs like armor, but testing them until only truth remains. So how do we build accountability with this new generation? How do we build accountability with this Gen Z that has been brainwashed in their schools, not educated? They were brainwashed. They were programmed. So how do we reverse all of that and start building accountability? How do we fix it? How do we build back a culture of understanding and accountability without slipping into censorship or cruelty? It starts small. It starts with all of us. Model what accountability looks like. When you're wrong, admit it publicly. When you speak in anger, own it. That one act alone changes the tone of the room. If you are giving an opinion, state it as so. I do it all the time. I do it on this show. I do it on social media. This is my opinion, guys. It's not fact, but this is what I personally feel about something. Just be honest. Look at Denzel Washington. He once said, if you have enemies, it's because you stood up for something. But if you make mistakes, own them before someone else does. That's leadership. That's humility in motion. And that is something this current culture doesn't understand. They don't understand that humility isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's something we all should feel. It helps us grow. Or consider when Morgan Wallen used a racial slur. He didn't disappear, but he also didn't deflect. He apologized, educated himself, and took real steps to repair the damage. That's accountability that leads to redemption. What can we do next? Learn the lost art of listening before responding. I do it all the time. I will sit and read a room. I will listen to everything being said. I want to hear more from you than I want to speak to you. That's how you win a debate. That's how you educate people. Learn who you're talking to. In a society where everyone reacts instantly, taking a moment to breathe before replying is revolutionary. Imagine if we all paused long enough to say, "What did you mean by that?" instead of "How dare you?" That single shift could rebuild bridges that outrage has burned. Another thing, practice critical thinking. That means listening with the intent to understand, but not necessarily agree. Accountability isn't about humiliation. It's about restoration. If somebody says something wrong, use it as a moment to educate, not annihilate. That's what mature societies do, kids. They correct with compassion. Positive reinforcement. It's a very simple technique that we have lost somewhere along the line. Think about the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't just demand justice, he demonstrated accountability. He spoke truth, accepted consequence, and showed that love and discipline can move a nation more than hatred and chaos ever could. Why aren't you modeling yourself after these influencers of that time that you claim to support, but you're acting completely opposite of how they did? For the older people out there, or for the individuals that are about to start a family, teach accountability early. We're raising a generation that confuses consequence with cruelty. If you tell them you're wrong, or you tell them they are wrong, all of a sudden you're the villain. That's a problem. They should understand that you're not the villain. You're actually doing what you're doing out of love so they don't make that same mistake again. Kids are being taught that any disagreement is aggression. It's not. Instead, teach them that when you say something, you stand by it. You learn from it. Freedom is a responsibility. It's not a toy. And finally, guys, we have to build communities that value correction. In recovery, I learned that firsthand. When I said something harsh or selfish to the people I was in recovery with, we sat down, we looked each other in the eye, and came to the conclusion, hey, that's not who you are, man. That's accountability with love. That's how you grow. I didn't get mad. They were absolutely right. I was acting out of line. The truth is, accountability isn't a weapon. It's a mirror. And I think that's what a lot of these parties are afraid to look at. They refuse to look at themselves, and that makes them so hateful. Look at yourself more. Stare at yourself. Is this who I am? Does this make me happy? Or am I walking out that door every day just so full of hate and disgust because I'm not happy with myself? It doesn't destroy the person holding the mirror. It reveals the person behind the words. Remember that. And there's, of course, a human side to this. When I got sober, I learned something powerful. You can say whatever you want, but you can't choose how the world reacts to it. That's humility. Again, it's not censorship. It's understanding that our words can heal, but they can also burn down the very bridges we're trying to build. And that's what freedom really is. It's not the right to speak, but the strength to listen after we do. If you want to live free, speak honestly, accept consequence, and grow from it. That's the process of becoming more than a voice. That's becoming human. As scripture says in Proverbs 18:21, the tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Freedom of speech is sacred, but so is accountability. One without the other is tyranny dressed as liberty. So the next time someone says something that offends you, don't cancel them. Challenge them, ask questions, seek context. That's how we rebuild dialogue in a world that's forgotten how to talk. And if you speak, speak with intent. Know that your words travel farther than you think. They can build or they can destroy. And both outcomes belong entirely to you. You make that choice. Freedom of speech is not a freedom from consequence. It's freedom through consequence. Because only when our words are tested do we discover what they're truly made of. Thank you for listening, my friends. Once again, I am Stephen Lancaster, and you have been tuned in to Facts Me, where we educate, not fabricate. Everybody, please stay safe out there. Love one another. Let's help each other build a civil society again. Stay curious, stay humble, and as always, stay free, my friends. Until next time. Hey, my friends, please join me on Facebook at facebook.com/CanYouFaxMe to continue these discussions, gain access to powerful memes, and leave your thoughts and comments. That is facebook.com/CanYouFaxMe.